Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. Guess what? More stuff to talk about today. I am going to talk about this guy, the Apple Vision Pro. Very, very interesting presentation. Had to wait forever to get to it. I'm going to compare it a little quickly to the Meta Quest. Here you go. 2, which is like this, right? And the Apple Vision Pro, much, much thinner. There's a lot of really interesting technology in it, but there are definitely some downsides to it as well. So anyway, if you want to watch the Apple keynote, I'm sure it will be live by the time I publish this video, and hopefully, anyway, I'll put a link to it in the description so you can watch it if you want to. It's at the very end, so just skip to the end and you'll be able to see it, and you don't have to watch through all the rest of the stuff, which I did, which was annoying because there was a lot of stuff that was just sort of rehashed things. Anyway, so starting off with one really interesting and intriguing part of this is this iris scan. So there's an actual iris scan. So when you put the goggles on your head like that, you get an iris scan that will validate that it's you or something like that. So that's number one. Just wait, we're going to get to this stuff. We also have hand gestures, so you can look at things and then hand gesture stuff around to move it around in the space. And then we have 3D images and videos that you can take. There's a little button on the top that you can push. There's also a crown, just like on a watch. It looks very much similar to the Apple Watch crown. And what that does, I guess, is it increases and decreases the amount of immersion, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. But anyway, those three features together, if you ever watched Minority Report with Tom Cruise, I mean, it's like, geez, I feel like they basically just took the playbook of Minority Report, and they're like, okay, how can we actually replicate this? So very cool. Iris scanning, super, super cool. Hopefully you won't have to cut your eyes out to hide from the government. They do say this is all very private, and it's all encrypted. Nothing leaves the confines of your headset or anything. The headset is also very, very thin. It wears on the head nicely like this, and you can see people's eyes. This is a bit of an illusion, so I'll talk about this more. I just have a few pictures at this point because this is real hot off the press here, right? So I was just watching the event and I'm doing this now. But anyway, super Minority Report, but also really, really interesting. If you look at this image of this person, you can see that you can, just like with my glasses on, you can see what's happening. So I can see you, you can see me. So if I'm wearing these headsets, this is very, very different than this. Obviously, you look like a Cyclops or something if you wear a Meta Quest. So this is fundamentally different in terms of the way that the interactivity will work. It also is designed very specifically to be see-through. Now, it's all a trick. So there's a wraparound screen on the front that actually is a projection. That actually isn't your eyes. That is a recasting of your eyes. So I think what it's doing is it's taking some interior vision and things like that and then projecting it out onto a screen. So while it looks very transparent, it's actually not. But there's a lot of tricks they can play, because as you do something that's fully immersive, so say you were playing an immersive game or an immersive video, they can put a shadow across the actual image that you're seeing here, so it looks like your eyes are blocked off, so you can very easily tell if a person is completely immersed in what they're doing versus available to talk to you. And also they have things like, even if you're in immersion, I would assume there's some settings and things you can do with that, but even if the person is in immersion, you can when a person approaches or something, you'll actually see them begin to appear through the cloud or something. Again, very, very different than something like this, which is totally immersive, and you'll just bash right into somebody if you're playing a game. So very different with that. A couple of things that are rather interesting. Number one is the price tag. It's $3,500, $3,499. It will not be available until 2024. They said first of the year. I don't know what that means. It could be order January 1st and then wait another 3 months to get it. I'm not sure. But $3,400, $3,500 is very expensive. This, by the way, this is 256 gigs of RAM in here, and this guy is, I think it was $500, right? So, and there's a cheaper version that's $100 cheaper with 128 gigs of RAM. So we're talking approximately, what is that? 7x the expense of getting a Meta Quest. That's a hard ask. But one of the really interesting things here is that you do not need the little controller thingies to hold on to and the game controllers and such like that, which you can use your eyes. So it tracks your eyes, it knows where your eyes are looking, and you can use hand gestures like pinch and zoom, and I assume something like that. If you do your thumbs up, you get hearts that appear, things like that. So it is a very cool new interface paradigm that Apple is working. But one downside of that, one really nice thing about having a controller is you get haptic feedback. You get that little buzzing sound, right? So one of my favorites of playing the MetaQuest is Beat Saber, and with Beat Saber, when you slice a block, it goes bzz, like that, right? So you get this little tiny sense of feedback that you know that you've done it correctly, and that gives you a very big advantage over just your hands, because if you pick up an actual, real object like this, you get haptic feedback. I can feel this object. I know what its dimensions are and stuff. The problem with a virtual world is I might pick up a 3D object and try to manipulate it, but I don't get any direct sense with that. So will they or a third party end up selling haptic gloves for this? I would imagine that would probably be necessary to use it for a lot of different use cases, but that is a definite downsize. Another problem with this is that apparently it sounds like it needs a personalized fit. So you will have to go in and have your head measured, and then they will. So it makes it much less seamless to go online and purchase one of these things, right? If you have to have your head measured and have the band and everything and the part that inserts into it all fit, it's going to make it somewhat complicated, difficult to scale that out too, to sell a lot of copies of this. The other thing that they do have that's very cool that they don't have for the Meta, I keep wanting to call it Oculus, is they have corrective lenses. So my wife, for example, has very bad eyesight, and they have Zeiss lenses that you can fit into this thing. And so, and I don't know how much that'll cost, because Zeiss is not going to be cheap, but that actually that would allow you to be able to interact with this thing without needing to have glasses inside of the actual goggles. So that could be very, very cool for people who need it. Again, could be expensive. Another thing that I noticed that I was very kind of watching, they're like, yeah, watch super immersive movies and surround sound and all of this kind of stuff on an airplane. By the way, super cool idea. They were like, you can basically scroll the little dial, block out everybody, put in some AirPods, and you can have a completely immersive movie experience without even knowing you're on an airplane. That's pretty darn cool. So that would be cool. But if you're trying to watch this with your, friend, loved one, whatever, they didn't really say that there's a shareability aspect to this. So I would certainly hope that if you were wealthy enough to afford two of these things, that you could have two of them, you could sit together on the couch and watch the same movie at the same time, or play the same game at the same time, and interact with that same view. So that seems a little iffy. Most of the applications that they showed, including games, unfortunately, were using like game controllers and stuff, were very much 2D screens placed into a 3D environment. So that was something along the lines of, I don't know, we got this piece of paper here. So, something like this. You've got this 2D piece of paper and it floats around in the screen. I'm sure it's very visually stunning, but that just makes it effectively a very big monitor, and a very, very expensive monitor. So is that going to be a killer app? I don't think so. There's a lot of very cool software, the software stacks that they have available, including a whole new, I think they called it AR Composer, something like that. Anyway, but it has a whole software stack that's additional to extensions of Swift and the other things that are part of the normal OS, Mac OS, creation SDK. There we go. That was the word I was looking for. Anyway, they have an extension of that to do the 3D stuff, but it seems like a lot of it is just sort of pasting 2D panes into a 3D window. That's not a killer app yet. They're going to need something along the lines of a platformer for video game consoles. They're going to need something along the lines of a Beat Saber for a MetaQuest in order to make this something that people are willing to shell out that kind of money for. And remember, this is expensive. A Switch or an Oculus, a Meta, those things are on the order of a few $100s. This is 7x that amount. Or more, even more than PlayStations and things like that. So it's going to require a significant killer app for people to really, really want to do it. Now, I'll get to the use cases in just a minute at the end. Another thing that's a problem that's just kind of a little bit unbelievable, but that is you can just barely see on the edge of this image of her, there is a battery cable. So it is a cable that goes from the headset into a little battery that only lasts 2 hours that you can stick in your pocket, and or you can plug it into a power brick, I'm sure, and just use it 100% of the time. Now, they tried to make that into an advantage. They're like, oh yeah, you don't have to carry the weight on your head, but it's like, that's icky. An external thing for an Apple product is really kind of gross. So this has that sense that even though it's very beautiful and everything, very much a Generation 1 product, very complicated to purchase because you have to get it personally fit to you, very expensive, a little bit kludgy with having an extra battery compartment that fits outside of that, difficult things about that. In terms of the stuff that they've done for this, they have, I think it was 12 sensors. It's crazy. There's cameras all underneath it, inside of it. There's cameras inside here that are tracking you. There's LED lights. There's whole surround sound things. There's audio sensors. There's incredible amount of stuff. They're using the M2 chip that is famous from the Mac laptops. But in addition to that, they're adding in an R1 chip for the sensors, specifically to integrate sensors and all of that work that they're doing. And supposedly it has a 12 millisecond latency time for the sensors, which is insane. So, in terms of what they've done to create this thing, it's pretty darn impressive. Having this R1 chip in tandem with the M2 chip is really amazing. I don't know, they probably should have called it the R2 chip just to keep things in order, but whatever. But the other thing is that they have, again, Apple, this sort of insane desire not to have fans. It looks like what they have is a whole bunch of vents at the bottom and then a couple of kind of slits at the top, and so it draws air in, naturally pulls it up, and works it through the sensors, through the chips, all of that kind of stuff, so it just kind of comes out. The way that it represents your eyes is also the way that it can do avatars, so it can do 3D avatars and stuff. What it does is I guess you turn it around and you face it towards you, and it scans your face, sort of like the phone, when you do this thing where you move your head around to get your 3D scan of your face, that it'll do something like that, and then it's reprojecting that stuff. It can create avatars if you're doing like Zoom meetings or FaceTime meetings. I believe it's also the way that it does your eyes, is it sort of records that and then it figures out where your eyes are and it recreates that. So hopefully it's not uncanny valley. It looks really cool from this. It looks like it's actually clear. I was calling this the Apple Ski Goggles Pro because it really, really looks like a pair of ski goggles to me. But anyway, there's some very, very cool technology going on. The software, extension of traditional screen interaction, and just like I said here, the killer app. Oh, one really interesting thing here, sorry, this is all very hot take kind of stuff, is that Unity made a big win with this because Unity has integrated themselves with what's going on here for the Apple Vision Pro, and that means that Unity is the 3D game engine is going to be integrated with this, and Unity games and the Unity environment are what's going to be driving a lot of what's happening in here. So that's a really, really big win on Unity's part. So go them. That's very, very cool. But my general initial takes on this, number one, very expensive, even though I'm a very tech forward person and I want to be able to look at these new products and stuff. $3,500 is one of those like, whew, that's a lot. Also the fact that it's a little bit kludgy, it feels very Gen 1, even though it's absolutely beautiful, it's stunningly, gorgeously put together. It's still, because of the fact that the battery pack is separate and there are some things that you have to do that are a little bit kludgy to use it, and the fact that there's no haptic feedback options, it feels kind of Gen 1. And then the big thing, like I said earlier, is where is the killer app? What is the application that is going to drive people to have this? What is the price point that this is going to have to be at? Is it going to have to get down to something like this? How many generations will it take to do that? I don't think it'll probably have to get down to that level, but I think more along the lines of an iPhone. So something on the order. By the by, it's 2 4K plus resolution screens that are inside of the Apple Vision Pro, and they are foveated, which means that it follows your eye tracking and it focuses the quality parts of the screen to wherever you're looking. So all of that stuff is really amazing. But can it get down to an iPhone cost of like $1,000? No, I don't believe so. But I have a feeling it's going to need to about have the price to maybe $1,500 to $1,800 to become really popular. Why did they release it now? They need developers to develop for it, right? That's the problem. So you've got this really amazing piece of technology, but unless you have some real killer apps out there that people are dying to get, it's simply not going to become popular, and Apple needs it to become popular. It has a little bit of a sense of the original iPhone, and the case that they only had a couple of apps and they didn't have an app store yet. They will have an app store from day one for this, but it's not going to have a lot of apps unless people start developing. And that's something that Apple needs software developers to do, so it makes sense they would announce this at WWDC because they need software developers. So anyway, we will see what happens. If they can come up with a few real killer apps for this thing could really take off. It feels like a very big risk on Apple's part, but also a huge paradigm shift, and it could be just amazingly cool stuff. So I, for one, am very excited about it. Will I get in line to purchase one on January 1st? My goodness, I just don't know. Honestly, I feel a little bit like it depends on my financial situation at that point. It's just $3,500 is just nothing to sneeze at. You know, that's a Mac Studio. That's a whole very, very useful piece of kit for me to purchase that I can do a lot of work on. Versus something like this where, yeah, I could develop for it, but I think that more along the lines of I want to find out what it's going to be like to use it. I really do like the VR experience. I actually, you know, even though this is less expensive and kludgy, I really, really like the way it operates, and I feel like it's very, very cool, and it has the inklings of where things are going. Is this the correct form factor for this? Not quite yet. It needs to get shrunk down. It needs to use less battery power, things like that. Will it get there? Yeah, probably around Gen 3 it's going to get there, just like the Apple iPhone Gen 3 was the first one that was really, really good. So in the meantime, I don't know. I'm curious whether I'm going to buy it. I just don't know at this point whether I will or not, given the expense and the fact that it really feels very Gen 1. I would love to know. Let me know in the comments what you think. Are you going to purchase one of these when the first generation of this comes out, or are you going to wait? And who do you think the right audience for this first generation is, and what is the killer app, or what are the killer apps for this? So definitely let me know in the comments. Please do like and subscribe, all of that good stuff. Check out the merch store links, my Patreon patron, my Twitter subscription links. All of that stuff is in the description. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.